Hi everyone, we are about to start our Venturing into Healthcare panel. So please come on down, take a seat to hear some of the cool things that these folks have been experiencing in the healthcare space. I will pass it over to Michael Best partner, Sarah Churchill, Llamas.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to our panel on healthcare innovation. I'm really excited to be talking to these folks today, and I'm actually most excited to be able to have all of us together on a patio just talking earlier. So I think that was really awesome. So I'm gonna start to my immediate left and introduce everybody. First, I have Ehab Gabr. He is the director of Plug and Play Texas. He is a distinguished figure in business strategy, healthcare administration, and technology innovation. Devoted father of 4 daughters, he brings a unique perspective to his multifaceted career journey. I also wanted to note that Plug and Play's mission is to connect startups with blue chip corporations, and they've launched more than 30 unicorns. Plug and Play has over 60 offices worldwide and over 70,000 startups in its ecosystem. It also has a venture capital arm and has invested in about 2,500 promising startups. So thank you for being here. Next, I have Emma Cartmell. She is the founding partner of Create Health Ventures. And I'm not allowed to read her bio. Emma is a genius in this space. She is a master operator and very, very knowledgeable in the healthcare technology and pharma space. So we're very, very lucky to have her because I know how busy she is. Buzz White is at the end, and I am going to read his bio. Welcome, Buzz. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Physician Practices for LivTech. Let's see. He really has a passion for serving the physician practices industry. He's built multiple products focused on helping underserved patient populations and led large initiatives leveraging technology to improve quality and efficacy at the point of care. Most recently, Buzz was the co-founder and CEO of Foundria, which is now branded as ChartPath, and later acquired by LivTech. LivTech provides a comprehensive suite of solutions specifically designed for senior care aimed at enhancing operational efficiency across crucial elements of the care continuum. So thank you all. Thank you for being here today. So what I'm hoping we can just start out with is I'm going to give everybody a chance just to introduce themselves outside of their bio, talk a little bit about what they do and the organizations that they're with. So you want to go first?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Ehab, very nice to meet you. So I'm the director of the Plug and Play office here in Cedar Park. We're really excited about launching. We just launched a few weeks ago in Cedar Park, really one of the largest innovation platforms in the world. You know, we work with tens of thousands of startups all over the world, and we connect them to over 550 corporate partners. One of the verticals we're most excited about is healthcare. And shout out to my colleague Aya here in the audience. She flew in from Silicon Valley. She really heads up our healthcare vertical. So if you have any questions around how we can help you, whether you're a founder or wherever you are in your journey, we'd be happy to talk to you. So just a little bit about myself. I used to develop surgery centers. So I used to help surgeons, orthopedic surgeons, neurosurgeons, interventional pain doctors develop their own surgery center and become entrepreneurs. A lot of the surgeons I would work with would start their journey as maybe an employee in a hospital, and I would really help them become independent, develop their own surgery center. I did that in Michigan, South Carolina, New York, Florida. And there was really 2 sides of that business. There was the operating side as well as the real estate side. And so we helped the surgeons. We would deploy capital with them. And so every surgery center was essentially a startup. And my job was to get it to break even, and then they would kind of move me to the next. So I did that all across the country, did one overseas as well. So I have a pretty deep understanding of like owning and operating a healthcare system and really growing and scaling that business and getting it to kind of private equity level. So with that, I'll pass it off to my colleague here.
Hi, thank you. Whoa, this is loud. Hi. It's good to see you all this afternoon. I'm Emma, originally from the UK. I've been over here in the US for just over 20 years. I got into digital health really working for SAIC. They're a really large government system integrator. And we built the electronic medical records for the VA and the DoD, and we built the payment systems for Medicare and Medicaid. We ran the National Cancer Institute. We built out the FDA IT backbone. So I went literally from knowing nothing about the US healthcare system to understanding deeply how everything works down to literally the code level. This has actually been a really helpful background for being in venture because I get pitched a lot, as you can imagine, and people say, we just plug it into the API for the thing, and I'm like, no, the government is still using software that we built 20 years ago, and it's not very easy to plug in to do the thing. So it's getting better, but it's still pretty difficult. So I really started out just deeply understanding how all the systems work within the digital health ecosystem. Then I moved over to Abraxis Bioscience. It was an oncology therapeutic company. And I was responsible for digitizing the process and how we brought our drugs to market. And that sounds wonderful, and it sounds really normal in the tech world, but in pharma, recipes are the most tightly held secrets in companies, and they didn't want to digitize them. They really did want to do everything pen and paper. So that was a really difficult change management process to go through. We did successfully bring 3 drugs to market and ultimately sold the company to Celgene, which was a great exit. And since then, I've been investing in digital health companies for about 10-ish years. I'm active across about 80 different companies in our ecosystem, and then decided to really formalize my fun work and launched a fund called Create Health Ventures back in January of 2023. And we invest in payer-facing technologies, so technologies that the ultimate customer would be Cigna or Humana or United, for example. And we also invest in payer-facing technologies as well as tech-enabled services within the healthcare sector. And I will pass over to Buzz.
Hi, I'm Buzz. I'm not as deeply experienced as my colleagues here. My background's been in healthcare ops. Primarily, I actually met Sarah when we were both serving with an organization that treated the uninsured and underinsured populations in Central Texas. And we worked on things that how to bring care closer to the homes of these families and how to leverage technology to improve their experience with a really shitty system. And from there, we kind of ventured out, and I started a company that helps physicians who see patients in skilled nursing facilities, assisted living, and other subacute markets. We're now fortunate to be part of a larger private equity-backed strategic that focuses even deeper on the technology for the subacute market, and have been having a lot of fun buying companies that provide services and technology to the market, and growing our impact even more. Thank you for having us.
Can you talk a little bit about the growth that you have experienced in your space in the last couple of years, and maybe what some of those drivers have been for that growth?
So we started the company in 2014, released version 1 of our product. There were 5,000 long-term post-acute care investors. We were introduced to our first group as we were trying to figure out what to do, and he said, hey, we're in this space. I asked him what a SNF was. I'd never heard of this thing, skilled nursing facility. And then we worked with them to build out a product, and we started looking into the market, and we raised our first round on the premise of this market is about to take off, and it's more than the silver tsunami. It's more than people getting older. The long-term post-acute care market, 80% of that market comes from the acute setting, and it's 90% of the market is dual chronic illness patients above the age of 71. As care was being moved from the hospital into the subacute network, where it's cheaper, more financially viable to deliver, similar quality, we knew it was going to take off, and we raised our first round of about $1 million on the concept that we're going to go from 5,000 to some amount. And that some amount today is about 123,000 providers in this space in America that are in it or tangential to it that we serve. And we kind of slowly grew for a while. We were right. we were wrong on the timing. We had to survive for about 2 years before it really started ticking up. And then it hit us in 2020, we were about $2 million a year in revenue, and now we're about $38 million a year in revenue. So it's coming even faster now.
What do you think's mainly driving it? I'm just curious. Do you mind kind of diving into that a little bit? Is
I-
it physicians have finally realized they need it for reimbursement?
I think a lot of it is consolidation right now. So this space seems to be 4 or 5 years behind traditional healthcare. So where we saw a lot of consolidation, and now we're seeing that consolidation break apart. This market has just finished its consolidation phase. And so we're seeing more professional approach to how these physicians serve in the long-term care facilities. And we're seeing those facilities invest more in marketing their services to referral sources, which is primarily hospitals. We're seeing a larger investment in long-term care from the insurance payer side, not just from Medicare and CMS, which has been great. While everybody else is facing decreasing rates, we're seeing rates increase. So I think a lot of it has to do with kind of how they're partnering up with the risk takers, the financial risk taker settings, the acute settings, to funnel patients there a little sooner, a little faster out of the hospital and provide quality care in those environments. So the average patients per facility has increased 30% year over year for the last 5 years. It's a very low margin industry though, so I don't know how much more pressure it can take.
Perfect. Thank you. My next question is for Emma. You talked a little bit about your investment thesis. Can you talk a bit about your portfolio and what are some of the common complementary themes kind of between the portfolio?
Sure. So actually, I want to just follow up on something that Buzz just said, and it was that he was 2 years too early for the market. That happens a lot in digital health, and it's as an investor, I tried time entering funding a company right before their inflection point. And that is something that we've been able to do out of our new fund. We've made our first 5 investments, and we were able to invest in each of those companies right before one company signed 5 payers, another company signed 6 payers, and then the pharma deal we just did was right before. It hasn't been announced yet, so I can't actually say, but a really large pharma company signed. And so so just to give you all a bit more of context behind that, it generally takes about 5 years from when you start your digital health company to really hitting your inflection point when you're going to get big enterprise customers. And so you really want to make sure that if you're out raising money, that you are aligned with the fund that you're raising money from, because funds are 10 years, and you want to make sure that you know where the partners are in their deploying capital cycle, because they're usually deploying the money in the first 1 to 4 years, and then they need to exit all of the companies out of their fund by year 10, maximum year 12. And so it's really important for us that we time putting our capital into companies right before that inflection point so that they become really attractive targets in the market. So just a big general thing that I don't think a lot of VCs talk about. So I just thought when Buzz said that just made me think, I want to share that with all of you because that's something I wanted to double click on. But my portfolio is currently made up of, we've got a big focus on health equity. There's a lot of injustice and terrible healthcare delivered, not just in America, but across the world, especially for poorer people. So we've got a big focus on health equity, social determinants of health. And the investment we recently made in Pair Team back in October of last year, I think illustrates that really well. So Pair Team are focused on the 5% of the Medicaid population that are 75% of the costs in any state. And they've built out a care team, which is nurse practitioners, behavioral health specialists, and community-based organization workers who basically leverage technology to work with that 5% that costs so much money and keep them out of the ER and make sure that they have access to everything they need to be healthy. I know that raising money has always been challenging for companies focused on selling into the Medicaid space. So $1.5 billion has been deployed into companies, into venture-backed companies with Medicaid solutions, and $25 billion for the Medicare Advantage. So most VCs are looking at solution sets for the 65 and over, or commercial-based insurance. Very few VCs are comfortable doing deals in Medicaid and for Medicaid solutions. And that is ultimately because the laws are different in every state. And so you have to understand how to read those contracts and figure out the risk you're taking on as an investor. My partner and I are really comfortable reading through Medicaid contracts. You just heard my background. We were building out the original systems. So it's something that we kind of enjoy, and we think that this investing in this space in the market is truly where we're going to get the most impact in helping improve health equity. So it's a general theme across our portfolio. I've just mentioned Pear Team. Another company similarly in that space is Advocacia, and they screen all members for eligible benefits and then sign them up through text message. So if you're on Medicaid and you should have access to SNAP, for example, which is a food program, making sure you can get access to affordable nutrition, then essentially you're screened and signed up for that. Maybe it's LIHE, which is energy and that type of thing. So we're not doing, I don't think what we're investing in is particularly sexy. People keep asking me if I'm doing lots of AI, and I'm like, no, because healthcare is really broken, and there's lots of injustice and inequity in the system, and I feel like we're doing a bit more sort of like nuts and bolts investing.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Ehab, so do you mind diving into your model at Plug and Play a little bit? I hear this idea of corporations working with innovators. I myself, used to be the person at the corporation who would be looking at an innovator, maybe not sure whether or not we should move forward. Is this something worth trying? Am I going to look silly? Is the technology really what they say it is, or is it just going to totally fail to scale? And how do I know that as someone maybe who has an idea for new revenue or innovation, but maybe not on the tech side? So can you talk a bit about just the Plug and Play model and how you can sort of bridge that gap? Because for me, that's the thing that I can't quite get my own head around.
Sure, absolutely. And I also want to just quickly tap on something that Buzz said and also what you said, Emma, really interesting. So I think it's really important that you get to know your investor and really understand where they're comfortable investing and kind of what their appetite is. But also, as Buzz mentioned, you should also understand kind of your market and where it is in maturity level, right? He mentioned his market in particular. There was a lot of consolidation, a lot of private equity activity consolidating. And so when you look at healthcare, you kind of look at, for example, surgery centers where I was very familiar with, there's still about 70% of those facilities are independently owned. There is consolidation happening, but it's not as mature as the space mentioned. So a lot of times you can take maybe technology that maybe from skilled nursing setting and bring it into another, I would say, sub-vertical within healthcare. So just wanted to mention that quickly. But great question. In terms of the plug and play model, we have over 550 corporate partners. And really the core of our business is really understanding what the industry partners, what challenges they're trying to solve for. So when we're thinking about healthcare, and particularly in Cedar Park, where we're launching a healthcare vertical, and my colleague joining me from Silicon Valley, where we have a very mature healthcare vertical in California, we work with anchor partners, right? And so the anchor partners, in my mind, that we're going to be reaching out to here in the local Austin ecosystem, companies like UT Systems and all the large healthcare systems. And so we work with corporate partners in the value chain. And typically we work with innovation executives, as you mentioned, maybe CTOs, CIOs, directors of engineering, directors of innovation. And those corporate partners that comprise that value chain, we will put them on an advisory committee and understand what challenges collectively are they trying to solve for. And then we will do almost like a cohort with that particular group In addition to that, and that's kind of our acceleration model, which lasts 3 months, and we do that twice a year. Is what we'll be doing in Cedar Park, and we've been doing it in healthcare vertical for years in Silicon Valley. In addition to understanding what the whole value chain is interesting solving for, we take a deeper dive with each client. So as we, let's say, work with UT Systems, for example, something that they're interested in, another, healthcare system or another provider might not be interested in. So we do what we call independent deal flow sessions. In those deal flow sessions, we'll understand what this large enterprise client, what they are particularly trying to solve for. And then we will source from all over the world. We have 50,000 startups in our ecosystem. And what that means is we've sourced from our 60 offices around the world, and we've cataloged startups, and all of them, I should say, have talked to our venture analysts around the world, and we've kept up to date as much as we can the data on these startups. So it's a lot more detailed data than you'll see like on Crunchbase and some of these other platforms, and we use that system to matchmake or to curate introductions to our corporate partners, very specific to what they're solving for. That's kind of the core of our business. And the acceleration model that we run, what's really unique about it, it's 100% free to the startup. So it's very unique, and I don't think I've seen anything like it in Texas. That's why we're so excited about this market. The reason we make it free for the startup or for the founder, we don't require any equity, and we don't charge anything for the startup to be part of our acceleration model, is because we want to attract stage agnostic startups, right? So if you think about solving large enterprise client problems, that is one issue that we have to solve for, is how do we make sure this technology is real, or if it's hitting certain milestones, because we have to take this technology now and introduce it to a very large enterprise. And so this technology, this founding team has to be ready to scale. And so we do a lot of that sort of one-on-one curation with the client. And we work with enterprise clients that have very different maturity levels of innovation, right? So sometimes corporates don't know what to do with a startup, as you mentioned. Like, they have no idea. Like, even if they find a startup, that might be relevant to one business unit, but maybe that business unit is not getting a lot of attention. And so, maybe that executive already knows that they're going to exhaust a lot of their time trying to get this, proof of concept into their enterprise. And so what we do is we really help corporates think outside the box, and we try and engage multiple business units, right? So a lot of times we'll have an internal champion. It could be like a CTO, a CIO, a director of engineering, and we will encourage that internal champion to pull in multiple business units, and then that way it helps us really streamline that journey for the founder and for the startup as they kind of engage with the corporate, and hopefully we cut down that, that enterprise sort of sales period.
Thank you. So my next question is for Emma, and I was kind of hoping that you could talk a bit about just market conditions around capital. I know we've seen some constriction. I know a lot of startups have had trouble raising. Mm-hmm. I think we're starting to see maybe some loosening of that, but could you just kind of give everybody a high level of what we're seeing, both for available kind of dry powder and capital, but also your own kind of the way you see your strategic deployment of that capital right now, knowing the market conditions?
Yeah, so it's tough out there. If you're raising, it's always really challenging to raise money, but it was really tough in 2023. Exactly this time last year, we had some Silicon Valley Bank and First Republic and Signature Bank collapse and need to get bailed out, and that really restricted venture dollars flowing in the ecosystem. What do I mean by that? So the state pension funds and the endowment funds that back venture capitalists pulled out of venture. So they stopped deploying capital. And in 2023, they didn't deploy any capital to emerging managers. So that was really painful for me and lots of other people out there raising money. So we have to depend on capital from strategics, high net worth individuals and family offices ourselves. And then this year they've said, we are potentially going to start writing checks again. It hasn't happened yet. And it's looking unlikely that they will right up until probably sometime in 2025. At the same time, Silicon Valley Bank do publish really good research, even to this day. And in their last report, they actually shared that 50% of US-backed venture companies are going to be running out of money in Q4 of this year. So 50% of venture-backed companies in America will be raising money between now and then. There's not enough capital to go around. It's going to be really competitive and really difficult to raise money. As a pretty new VC in the ecosystem, I'm already overwhelmed with deals to look at. It's opportunity ripe for VCs at the moment, but it's really hard to get our attention because there's just so many deals coming at us, and the momentum is going to pick up as the year goes on. And we've all got much smaller teams than we want, because none of us could raise the size of funds that we wanted to, so we don't have the teams. And then the big funds, the really well-established funds, you're all aware of who they are, they've been laying off their teams because they're trying to just take care of their own capital to make sure they can keep their funds running. So that's a little bit of the background on what's going on and why it's challenging, because I know people just get frustrated with VCs and say, you're not paying attention to me and you don't want to write me a check, but it's just as hard for us to raise money right now, and that's part of the problem.
Can I ask a follow-up? So, follow-up question. What does that mean to the folks raising the earlier rounds, the seed rounds, the angel rounds? Are those investors going, hey, it's going to be harder to raise that A round? Does that then tighten that market up as well?
Well, there's still a lot of angels deploying capital, thank goodness, and plenty of people just still doing pre-seed, which is great. But I think that people need to just think through what their fundraising strategy is going to be in the long term. So I wouldn't build a company planning to pursue venture capital necessarily. I would build a company that you can get angel funding to get started and try and bootstrap as long as you can and try and become profitable as quickly as you can, like good old-fashioned business tactics, unfortunately.
All right, so Buzz, my next question is for you. As a successful entrepreneur who is able to sell his company and has now been, I guess, sort of part of the acquirer now. You sort of went from, getting acquired and then you become part of the board, of the new company. Can you give us some insights and just lessons learned around, if you had it to do all over again, what do you wish you would have known or done kind of throughout that process as you maybe think about doing it all over again?
Yeah,
I don't know if you like that much torture, but
no, I asked Emma that question because it was selfish, right? Like, I need to know, because we're going to do it all over again at some point. We had a couple options when we exited, and one of the options, the guy said, look, we're going to hand over your product to these guys, you're going to be figureheads, you're going to ride out a 4-year term, but you're not really going to do anything, and you can't go do anything else. And then we had the guys that we ultimately went with, and they said, this is our vision, this is what we're going to use you for, this is how it's going to plug into everything, and where we're going to continue to invest. And we went with that route, and it's ultimately private equity. And they've been great. They've been great. But it's different, right? Private equity dynamics and venture dynamics are very, very different. And so every day we're learning new skills. Every day when we started the company, we flew Spirit Airlines and stayed at Red Roof Inn. And nothing against those products, they're wonderful, but I'm not using them on vacations. And all the skills that I'm learning in the private equity world aren't applicable to what Emma just said, which is bootstrap, build smart, build small, right? So it's been fun in that regard, and it's been fun to continue to watch the mission grow and watch the team grow, and that's really impactful. And we are learning a lot of skills that if I'm using them selfishly, I would hope, say, we start our next venture, and I can say, hey, Emma, I'm going to be more acquirable because I know how to do this, I know how to do that. and I know how to be valuable at post-acquisition, right? And the goal would be, you know, maybe instead of 90% risky for you, I'm 89% risky for you, right? And so that's kind of how we approach, like our team is approaching life after acquisition, is how can we turn this into the next story?
And what's the culture like? I mean, so I'm more used to sort of large corporate acquisitions where maybe you do one acquisition and it takes you 3 years to acclimate that company into your ecosystem. I feel like LiveTech has really had sort of a series of acquisitions in very short order. I represented a couple of those, more than one of those companies, ironically enough. So I know it was in short order. I mean, how did that impact the culture of y'all just sort of getting together and now saying, hey, we're all addressing the same market and our solutions are meant to be complementary, but we all are different CEOs sort of coming together, around almost a singular offering?
It's been interesting because it in itself is in its 5th year of life, right? Which is about when we should be trying to hit our inflection point, and we are. And we feel like a gangly teenager, right? We're grown up enough to do big boy stuff, but not really comfortable in our own body. But it's the spirit of startup functionality is still there. And what's wonderful is the culture is not ever been set by who we lovingly call our mothership, right? The culture is set by us in the field. And as new assets come into the portfolio, they adapt to our culture and they adjust our culture. And it's really neat. And for a lot of us, it's a very founder-friendly fund. And so a lot of the founders, we get to say, hey, we don't have the burden of payroll. And we get the mission-driven aspect that we get to live. And I think it's really enhanced everybody's culture and our collective culture. I think what we're learning to do now is how to tell a story bigger than ourselves. That's been the most difficult journey and the most eye-opening journey for us.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to ask Emma a question, which is, you are 100% strategic capital. Like I talk to startups and they'll say to me, gosh, you know what I really want? I really just want some strategic capital. Do you have any just advice for startup companies who are looking for their strategic capital? Like what exactly about the strategic capital makes it so win-win for both? I mean, I think some of this is very, very obvious. But sort of like what should they be looking for as they go to even find someone who is aligned with them? Mm-hmm. Because it's not like, oh, my strategic capital is just healthcare. It's just healthcare.
Yeah, no, it's not. So I'll dive into that a bit. So we are looking for companies that are serving up solution sets for payers or for pharma. And in the due diligence process, we will have you pitch our payer and pharma partners, whichever's relevant. So if you're pitching us, we are going to put you in front of United or Cigna or Humana or the Blues, and we're going to see how they respond to that pitch. As we have been doing this process over the last year plus at this point, we've done 5 investments, and 3 of them have actually gained enterprise contracts with those enterprises going through our due diligence process. That was incredibly value add for the companies, and it was incredibly value add for us because we were then able to talk to those enterprise customers and understand exactly the need that these companies were addressing for the payers of the pharma company. So that was fantastic. Once we put capital into the company, because we invest, we've got a small thesis. We're really focused on what we're investing in. So we host, last year at the health conference, we basically hosted a dinner for our portfolio companies, and they all brought 2 or 3 of their enterprise customers to dinner. Then we didn't have them sit with their customers. They had to go and sit and pitch the other payers in the room, and that worked out really, really well, and all of our CEOs loved it. They loved getting access to all the other buyers in the ecosystem. It was really effective, and more deals are happening, which is great. And then once we put capital into company, we also, our LPs, our investors, are successfully exited people from digital health. That's about 80% of who backed us and who invest in us. And so they roll their sleeves up and they help advise the companies and they introduce them to their former customers and that sort of thing. We also have a partnership in place with Chasm Partners. So again, once we deploy capital, we introduce our portfolio companies to one of the best digital health recruiters, and they help you bring really good people onto your team. We also partner up with performance coaches to work with the CEOs to make sure that you're not ignoring your blind spots. Because once you throw capital at someone and say, grow fast and don't break, I mean, that's a lot of pressure. And so I think it's really helpful to have a coach work alongside you and make sure that you understand your blind spots so that you can address them and get coaching on how to address them. So those are just some of the things that, I don't know, we could go on for hours.
Perfect.
But
That's
those
perfect.
It's just making sure you've got all that alignment that's important.
Yeah, I feel like for someone who can actually pass your test, it's a dream. You know, it's just sort of getting through the initial vetting to actually be picked. I think that's the hurdle. Okay, Ehab, this can be my last question. So if y'all have questions for the panelists, I encourage you to think of those and be ready. I think that's what that microphone probably in the back is for. So Ehab, can you, if I said to you, give me the pitch for Austin. If you have to walk into Silicon Valley and say, Austin is the place for healthcare, what is your pitch? What would you tell me? Why did y'all pick? I mean, for all the places in Texas, right? Because Dallas has a lot going on. Houston has a lot. San Antonio. Why Austin? Why was Austin first? And I can't believe it's because we're the capital, because you started up in Cedar Park. But I am just kind of curious. Like when you walk into Silicon Valley and you go, hey, Austin's the place to be. We need to start here of all the places. What does that sound like?
That's a great question. Thank you, Sarah. And I have a colleague from Silicon Valley joining me, so I have to be very careful. But really, Texas, the whole Texas market is really, it's going to be massive for plug and play. And really, quite frankly, Austin and Cedar Park, they were the fastest moving, right? And it's a bustling ecosystem. There's so many innovators and entrepreneurs. And Texas, I mean, it's a $29 billion surplus. You have the greatest number of Fortune 500 companies. But here in Austin, you have just an incredible ecosystem. You have really the aerospace and defense world kind of leaned in and provided, they kind of set up shop here. You have Army's Application Lab, you have Army's Futures Command, Defense Innovation Unit, and AFWorks. And these were really catalysts that came here in 2018 on top of everything that was already happening in Austin. And they've provided a tremendous amount of non-dilutive capital, hundreds of millions of dollars since 2018. So you see not just software tech, you see a lot of deep tech. And then here in Austin, you also have massive companies in our backyard. And that's really our core business, really at Plug and Play. We want to be in the backyard of corporates, right? So companies like Dell, like NXP, all the big semiconductor base. You have, Samsung, you have Tesla, companies that are really forward thinking on innovation like HEB, locally, here in the greater Texas ecosystem. And so all of these companies being in our backyard just became a natural footprint for us on top of all of this incredible innovation that you already see. You've seen kind of Austin grow for the past 30 years, and a lot of the other cities around the world have been kind of trying to look under the hood and see what's been happening in Austin, and it's been exciting to be a part of that, a small part of that journey, and we're excited to really throw more gasoline, on this awesome opportunity for us. And Cedar Park, when we partnered with the city of Cedar Park, because the reason we came to Cedar Park, and I kind of think of Cedar Park as kind of a marquee city of the greater Austin ecosystem, is the economic development organization there, particularly the mayor. They were very progressive, very forward thinking. So the mayor of Cedar Park actually works full time for a startup, which is a unicorn, and he's part-time mayor. And so they had an economic development plan that they actually helped us with, right? As we've been studying the market, Plug and Play, we studied Austin. We knew that Austin had so much going for it. Cedar Park also added to that study for us, and they really gave us a lot of information that was very helpful for us to pick the verticals, and one of the key verticals is healthcare. They wanted to really bolster the healthcare vertical. because I've also seen, as I've been in this ecosystem for several years now, I've seen an incredible grassroots like health tech community like bubbling up in Austin. There's organizations like Austin MedTech Connect. There's also Austin Healthcare Council, and these are really incredible organizations that they have phenomenal resources. And for us to really work with those organizations and really take this ecosystem to the next level is really exciting for us. And that's why I'm so excited to work with you, Sarah, and really collaborate with this very mature ecosystem. We've launched in other cities around the world. We're launching also in Warsaw, Indiana. And it's a much smaller city, right? And so we can launch plug-and-play model in a lot of cities, right? They don't have to be as big as Austin. And I'm personally really excited about Austin because I see it just a phenomenal opportunity because it's already got so much traction already. It's not, a tiny little Warsaw, Indiana. And then the last point I'll make is we launched a couple years ago in Alberta, Canada, also much smaller than Austin. And, just having launched there a couple years ago, the companies that we've worked with, meaning the companies that have gone through our acceleration model, and we've partnered them with local corporate partners, have raised hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's just in our 2 years really stretched. So when I see that happening in Alberta, I get really excited about the potential here in Austin. And so, please, do contact me and contact my colleague Aya, and we have Chuk as well here. Chuk is responsible for all things community building and really doing a series of events. So we'll be excited to do events, workshops around innovation and workshops around healthcare innovation and bringing corporate partners and investors together and just really kind of, continuing to add fuel to the fire here. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say, and Plug and Play has an event tomorrow at the Oracle building at what time? 3 to 5 o'clock.
Another healthcare panel.
Yep, and they can find more information about that on your website, I would assume.
Yes, or just contact me on LinkedIn. You can register on my LinkedIn as well. So.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to open it up to questions. If anybody has any questions, we would love to hear it. Is Femtech continuing, right?
Sure.
Whoever wants to answer,
Sure, that's a great question. So I'm personally excited about the idea of connecting, having come from healthcare, the idea of connecting preoperative care with intervention and postoperative care. So I think traditionally all of those have been siloed and disconnected. And I think recently there's been so many innovations where I think those three things can be tied together. Whether it's AI or whether different types of automations, but really capturing data from those three levels of the patient journey, and then fueling things like really like value-based care. Like value-based care has been an idea that's been maturing for 2 decades, but it really, I think because of the innovations in the past 2 to 3 years, I think we can, we are in an inflection point where we can truly deliver value-based care. If you tie these 3 elements together, because there's a lot of technologies I think that need to work together, and frankly, it's up to us to make them work together so we can deliver a better healthcare system. And so I would say, I guess, interoperability, I don't know.
I don't know. That's so 2012.
I mean, going along the line here, we'll all give you our quick 10 cents. And so I totally agree with value-based care enablement. I still think that's a really big area, especially for Medicaid patients. But something that you didn't mention, which I'm just going to quickly give a shout out, is there are more phase 3 clinical trials going on across the globe than at any other time before. And so patient recruitment and management of clinical trials is a really big area this year, especially because pharma companies are doing so well. That is their focus. How do we find patients? So,
am I supposed to say AI?
say something different. Yeah, say AI.
it's not. I actually think we're going to see a surgence of clinical-based obesity epidemic facing, right? So weight loss focus, obesity focus, all the chronic conditions that are touched by obesity, I think we're going to see a much stronger clinical focus on that and less of a consumer-driven focus on that. We're seeing these weight loss clinics pop up here and there, and they're run by chiropractors and stuff. And I think that's just the like, hey, there's a market here, and I think it will be followed with a real clinical focus.
Point. Right, yep. In front here.
Question. So how about healthcare management, which is workforce management? Is that the topic and investment area? The second half is the comparison also.
So if I understand your question, you're talking about healthcare management. Yeah.
Kind of workforce management. How is that area? How big is that? What area? What type of technology will be that's space?
Yeah, so I would say, just have been a former owner-operator of surgery centers. I know the two biggest costs for running a healthcare facility is human resources and supplies, right? Those two line items literally alone is like almost 50% of like my cost of delivery. So I would say really any innovation that can optimize human resource management, right? Whether it's better quality control, or whether it's shaving off minutes of an activity that a nurse needs to do before setting up the OR for the next patient. All of these activities really can add up. So I personally think of things like digital twins, those applications, applications that were maybe in other industries like manufacturing, and they were applied for workforce optimization. And I think of like Six Sigma in real time, and how do you apply, just-in-time inventory, right? And getting these technologies outside of kind of manufacturing and supply chain and non-healthcare verticals, getting them into the healthcare verticals. I personally feel like there's a big opportunity there, and certainly I get excited when I talk to founders in that space. But again, we want to tackle as many healthcare problems as possible because we cater to some of the largest healthcare systems in the world. So. Yeah, 100%. I do think there's a lot of potential for AI in that space, especially if you think, like when I say Six Sigma in real time, I think about, I think about digital twinning and really, integrating a layer of AI on top of that. And when I think of like just-in-time inventory, right, like, getting the supplies for a surgery center, the day before, the day of, versus having, an excessive amount of inventory, sitting in the inventory room for no reason, really. Like these things, making decisions through AI versus, somebody manually, making these decisions, I think are going to be very impactful.
All right, well, that's all the time we have today for questions. I'm sorry. You can definitely find these folks after the session for a few minutes and ask your questions. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for braving the traffic or lack thereof and people and everything else. But I just really appreciate y'all being here and the conversations we've had today. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.